Hello, I'm Soycat and welcome back to my second channel video. Did you know that when you are denied entry to a country, when you are turned away from its borders, you are generally returned to your departure location on the next available flight offered by your carrier? Additionally, that carrier is sometimes fined on top of having to get you home, so as a result, most airlines don't try to deliver you to countries that they don't think you'll get into. But how are you going to know if a particular passenger is going to be allowed into a particular country when there are such complex entry requirements for every country around the world that are slightly different based on where you were born, your citizenship, real residency, and so many other details? Well, that's something that's interesting enough before the great event of right now, but right now things have gotten a lot more interesting, in my opinion, and I wanted to talk about exactly why, how, and just the weird world of air travel in 2020. So let's dive into it, and let's start by talking about Timatic, which is, how this map is powered. It's the thing behind it, because the IATA, which is an organization you've probably heard of in the abstract, but you don't know what it is. It's the International Air Travel Association. It's a lot of airlines coming together and making a lot of things that help advance the industry, and one of those things is the Timatic tool. So this tool basically tries to work out for every one of the 200-ish immigration areas in the world. We could call them countries, but then people will be like, oh, there's only 194 countries. There's basically 200 countries, just a few aren't recognized. Of the 200-ish countries in the world, you can be flying from any one of those countries with any one of the 200-ish, passports in the world, and you can be transiting via another country. Also, each of those countries has its own health requirements and recommendations. Also, there are airport taxes in some countries. There are custom regulations, obviously that vary that you might not know about, and it can be very hard for any airline employee to know this stuff, so they use this tool in most airports around the world, and most airlines use it to work out, can you fly where you need to go? But obviously, the normal way that Timatic works, the normal way, if they can work out if a US citizen is able to enter the UK, which they usually can just do, just hop your passport in, or if a UK citizen can enter the US, which usually you can do, just sign up for an ESTA and, give the US government your social media, but side rant for another day. Things have gotten way more complex in the last 2 months. It's a rapidly evolving situation, and that's why this map is super interesting, because as you can see, it splits things into 4 categories. We've got the grey countries of Yemen or Syria, where, let's just be honest, you weren't flying there before this whole thing. It was very, very hard to get to either of those countries. There was Assyrian Airlines, which I've looked into several times. They still exist, and they were just about to start, operations. Bad timing, sorry, Syrian Airlines. Same with Yemen, and there's a few other countries that are in this kind of category of the data isn't quite there yet. Like, for instance, Niger is going through the same thing. But most countries are in one of 3 categories. No regulations, which is literally one country as best I can tell. Mexico has not changed anything as a result of current situation in the world. Coronavirus has not changed Mexico's status on travel, but they're the only country in this light blue category, because every other country is in, let's just call it let's call this pale blue, and this is going to be light blue, and this is going to be dark blue. So most countries are in the partially restrictive category, and what that effectively means, you might be thinking partially restrictive. Partially restrictive can kind of range from the UK, which is the most lax, where you just have to subject yourself to self-isolation for 14 days as of 2 days from now, and also fill out a little public health form. So, the UK is requiring you to do those things, which is one end of the spectrum. Whereas if we look at a country like, let's just go to Finland. Finland, you're not allowed to enter Finland unless you've got a residence permit somewhere in the EU, or you've got a British passport and your family members reside in Finland, or you're a resident of one of these countries returning to your country of residence, or, it's a very complex set of rules, basically, because every country is writing immigration requirements as they go. You cannot enter the Russian Federation unless you're a national of the Russian Federation, or you're an accredited, appointed employee of diplomatic missions, or, again, basically every country has restrictions like this, and this is the lower level. This is partially restrictive. There are countries in the dark blue, and in case you're curious as to what that looks like, because, again, knowing that, the US's situation, which is basically hey, Europeans, still banned. Fun fact, I am still not able to enter the United States of America. Maybe you think rightfully, maybe you think wrongfully. Maybe you're watching this in the US being yeah, thank God we got that darn limey guy out of here. But yeah, I've been unable to enter despite having good reason to for the past 3-ish months now. Kind of hurts, kind of stings given the current situation there. And so the US is banning all those people from those places. Canada is taking things a step further, and you cannot enter Canada unless you are a national of Canada or you're arriving from the USA, which has to be for non-discretional, non-optional purposes. Basically, lots of countries are closing down and have closed down over the last 2 months. We discussed that when it was happening, but it's weird that all of that is still happening here. But then there are countries that are totally restrictive. There are countries that go a step further than just you're not allowed to enter unless you're Canadian national or a spouse or a permanent resident or it's non-optional. You know, like there are country rules like that. But then there are countries like Ukraine. Flights to Ukraine are suspended. Would you like to get into Ukraine? No. You know, like that's how that works. Kazakhstan. Airports are closed for international flights unless it's a, you know, like ferry, sanitary, technical landings they're going in there. Again, the kind of loosest definitions you can find in here are that there are some countries that allow flights for carrying goods, you know, air cargo. There are some that will allow minor children born to nationals of India abroad, or with business visa, little exceptions in there in very, very specific categories. And then there are some countries that allow repatriation flights, like Thailand. But for the most part, most of these countries, and you'll notice a lot under Africa, are just like, yeah, you know what, we're done. Passengers are not allowed to enter Oman unless you're a national of Oman. It's actually kind of ridiculous when you look at certain countries which used to be some of the most open in the world, and obviously there's a reason why they've shut, but now they are full on just like, yeah, how about that? No. Passengers are not allowed to enter Argentina unless you're a national resident. Wait, another example. This is an island nation, Dominican Republic. Flights are suspended. There are no flights to the Dominican Republic, or for that matter, there are no flights to Haiti outside of government emergency humanitarian flights whatsoever. This is the world we live in. If you want to find this map, again, it's called the Interactive Coronavirus COVID-19 Traffic Regulations Map, powered by Tomatic. You can find this on the IATA Travel Center website. But the fact is, things have gone pretty crazy. To the New Zealand's restrictions are pretty intense. The world is very much locked down, and that means that the countries which are least, the only countries you can still fly to really are like Mexico. For most people, if you could get in there before, you can get in there now. If you could get in the UK before, you can get in there now. Again, in 2 days, you have to self-isolate for 14 days, but like, it's not the biggest thing. And there are countries that are on the same kind of lines, like, oh yeah, you must have an awareness questionnaire and you must self-isolate for 14 days. There are a few countries that are kind of loose, but they are few and far between. And at the same time as countries are finishing maxing out their kind of lockdown measures, I mean, it's kind of insane if you look at certain regions, just like, flights suspended. What's that? South Africa, major nation with a lot of flying going on. Flights suspended unless it's authorized by the Ministry of Transport or it's bringing back nationals of South Africa. And they have to be quarantined for 21 days even then. Basically, we're going through a crazy time as far as countries, but at the same time, we are seeing countries start to open back up. I mean, you can look at, Iceland, which is now open to EEA member states, and Switzerland, passengers with a British passport, passengers with a residence permit issued by a Schengen member state. Basically, like, they're slowly opening more and more places, and the way they're balancing that is being like, yeah, we'll just test people as they come into our country. Greece and Italy are both trying to do a similar thing quite soon. These countries are trying to reopen at the same time as other countries are closing down. And we don't know for sure until all of this is done, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. These countries rely on tourism to survive. But do they rely on surviving to tourism? Yeah, there's my high quality COVID-19 commentary. No, we are getting to the stage now where it's been like 3 months. A lot of countries can handle that. I mean, like, the tourism industry in Cote d'Ivoire was not huge before. It is not hugely affected. The amount of air cargo that the country needed to sustain itself wasn't a huge amount, so it's not the biggest of deals for certain countries to lock down. But when you're looking at countries like the UAE, which is entirely shut, actually, it's not actually entirely, by the way. It's just they're suspended except for evacuation and a few other things. But let's go for a crazy example here. Here are the routes in the world that make the most money according to Forbes. I mean, Forbes has gone in an interesting direction, but this is a list that is very much legit. Let's just take it for that. So the route in the world which makes the most money is British Airways, New York JFK to London Heathrow. It makes $1.16 billion a year. That's a lot of money, I think it goes without saying. And if we look at London to New York, you can see how on Monday the 8th of June, the nearest Monday, like working day, right, you can see how there are 2 non-stop flights available. This used to be the busiest, like international, intercontinental route in the world, with literally every airline having its own 5 to 10 flights, and there used to be, like 10-ish airlines at one point. Norwegian and British Airways, American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta, Virgin Atlantic, Norwegian. I might have already said them. There was the weird, also Icelandic low-cost carrier. There were so many different carriers doing the same exact flight between London and New York because it's such a big market. Now there are 2 doing 1 flight a day each. That's it. It's not just because it's Monday the 9th, by the way. On Tuesday, we got 3 flights, but then on Wednesday, I think we're back down to 2, and then on Thursday, we're back up to 3. No, we're back down to 2 still. There are 9 flights over the next 4 days on a route where previously that would represent part of a morning. That's kind of crazy. Maybe you think so. But if we go to London to Dubai, the third busiest, third highest earning route, $800 million. Actually, let's not exaggerate. It's not 800 million. It's $796 million. I'm sorry. I went over the top there. I hate to lie to you, and that was a huge exaggeration. But, I earned 796 million. Not a huge amount, I'll admit. Like, don't we all throw that away for breakfast? And there is a single flight operating between these countries, and as Emirates, again, they usually have like 6, I think it's 6 flights a day to London Heathrow, and then like they have like another 6 to Gatwick, and then a couple to Stansted. 1 flight a day now, and given that this is an airline known for their A380s, that 1 flight a day is a Boeing 777. If that's a big plane for most airlines, but it's Emirates' smallest plane that they're flying once a day instead of the usual 20-ish. It is insane. That's excluding the fact that no other airlines are flying the route. It is insane. Should we look down the list any further? London Heathrow to Doha is apparently 639 million. Let's see what that's looking like. I actually don't know about this one. No flights wait. For real? On Tuesday, no flights. Wednesday, there are no flights. A route which was formerly making last year, it earned $639 million. So every day it was making $2 million a day. How many dollars did it make on Monday? 0. Sunday, we got any dollars? Saturday, no dollars are being made any of these days. $2 million a day is just vanishing from the world. And that's ignoring the knock-on impact of obviously people doing things when they transit, like it's a high value activity. It's pretty crazy that, like, again, I lived near London most of my life, so I've always valued that it's one of the most connected places, and obviously it's still one of the most connected places right now by comparison, but the fact that one of the most connected places you can find will have a flight to a place like Sweden, it'll have no flights to a place like Norway, 0. Literally 0. Copenhagen, Denmark, 0. Another big capital, Paris. I assume that's all done by Eurostar. No, there are actually 2. Both British Airways and Air France making that flight. Wow, that sure is cool. What if you want to fly from London to LAX, a busy route with celebrities? 1 flight a day. It is, obviously the fact that there's any connectivity there, that's something that you won't have if you're unfortunate enough to, I don't know, live in Frankfurt, for example. So sure, that's kind of nice, I guess. Or, but the point I'm trying to raise here is that the world has gone from, the number of flights in the world have gone significantly down. Maybe that's a surprise to you. Maybe it's surprising to you that there's even this number of flights. Like, there are free train services, because the Eurostar's gone way down too, but that's a whole side note. But there are still 2 flights between London and Paris. That is kind of interesting. The fact that there are going to be flights between London and Madrid, a whole 2 of them also, although seems pretty high. 25 to 135, I would say 348 is pretty high by comparison. The fact that so many places around the world which were connected are no longer connected, partly because people wouldn't be able to if they did, but the fact that there is just no direct connection now between, London and, let's just pick another major city like Berlin, Germany. The fact that there isn't a connection. The capital of the 2 biggest, economically speaking, cities in the Europe. I think that could be true. I have no idea. I made up that fact. I know they're the 2 big cities in the EU, but I was like at the last second, like, UK is in the EU asterisk now, not in the EU non-asterisk, so not a true statement. But the fact that there's no flights at all, 0 ways for the people to connect and to do things, is a reminder of, like, there are a lot of people, some of them are just tourists who can't go and see the Berlin Wall or the London bridge. Sure. But there's also a lot of business people who cannot, do the deals that connect the countries. There's also a lot of goods that are not flowing between those countries at high speed. There are a lot of things that are impacted by this world, and it's kind of crazy to now see it in this real world. That like, oh yeah, good luck going to Berlin, suckers. You can't. Actually, if you have no stops, is there really no way, even with a stop, to get to Berlin? There's no connecting flight that will get me there. That's kind of wacky, right? Because we can go to Amsterdam 3 times a day. Again, it's kind of crazy that this is only 3 times a day, because like this is one of the busiest air routes I've ever seen. It's because there's like a lot of low budget airlines, because a lot of British people go to Amsterdam. There's only 3 flights a day right now, and they're all pretty well timed together. Anyway, what I'm just trying to say is the world, it'd be crazy, huh? Maybe you know that, maybe you don't. Maybe you find that shocking, maybe you find this shocking. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out the IATA travel map if you want to learn about China's restrictions, which are very straightforward and easy, or North Korea's, where passengers traveling as tourists are not allowed to enter, and passengers traveling on business or duty must spend 14 days in quarantine upon arrival. So I sadly am going to be cancelling my trip to North Korea. Ugh, worst part of all of this. But no, yeah, over the next, actually, I'll mention this now, just so we can get some fun incendiary debate in the comments. Over the next month or 2 is when I'm going to start, like, not ramping up travel to the place where I was before, but I'm going to be going to places that are welcoming, welcoming people, ideally testing on arrival, but whatever. Yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see how that kind of world goes, because we are seeing, fortunately speaking, actually, we haven't looked at this graph in forever, but we are seeing, it's obviously going to, here is Mexico's coronavirus cases. Oh, I remember, because I put it up for the video about crime rates and how you don't think about them. But if we look at the number of cases around the world, right, 6.8 million. It's gone up a lot since we last looked at it. We finally, just as of yesterday, you can see how the active cases started going down. Like we had 300, like you can see how like the number of cases, i.e. more people recovered than caught new cases for the first day in a long time. It's clearly gone back to about normal. But in the next week or so, we're going to see this like spike again, because the world is going through. The world is kind of opening up again, and I think that's the correct decision right now, on balance, because a lot of reasons. But what's going to be interesting to see is how things go in the next 3 months from now. Will this map ease up? Will the world ease up? Or will we have a lot of different strategies? And from there, I hope to see which country objectively, does the best from here and which one doesn't. Because I feel like right now, we're in such an interconnected world. People like to make comparisons to the 1920s Spanish flu all the time. It's like, do you think we're in the 1920s? Do you think, one, not only are the viruses different, like, it's a, this is a coronavirus, and that was the, H1N1 or H2N2. But, that was a influenza. This is a coronavirus. But ignoring that difference, it's also like humans are so different in our travel patterns. Like, you couldn't just be in Australia in less than a day later all that time ago. Wait, can you be in Australia if you try right now? I know that the flight was still operating from London to Sydney till recently, and it seems as though you can still get to Australia. That's nice. You take a stop, but that's pretty expected. But yeah, anyway, this video has gone off the rails. So I'll just say, how interesting, huh? My trip to North Korea will have to be cancelled, and you know what else is going to be cancelled? You, if you leave a comment that is saying first or second, because there's no place for that on YouTube. YouTube comments are a nice place. If you want to leave a dumb comment that no one's gonna be interested in, type out your political manifesto, as some people decide to do when we mention anything remotely political here. And because this is a channel about fun things about the world and stuff, and I hope you all enjoyed talking about precisely that. Second channel, do care. Goodbye.